Anthony Chadwick welcoming you to another episode of VETChat. I'm super excited to have Margo Mosher on the line today, who is the Global Head of Sustainability at Mars Veterinary Health. But before we start, just better explain, it is Ash Wednesday, hence the black mark on my forehead for those of you watching this as a podcast rather than just listening to it as a podcast, which is kind of apt in a way. When we have the ashes put on us, it says, remember you are dust and unto dust you shall return. We've got a certain amount of time on the planet, and are we going to be givers or takers? Are we going to do good or bad? And I think I can certainly say, Margo, that you're doing loads and loads of good, not only as an individual, but also as Mars Veterinary Health, but also the bigger family of Mars. I've just been reading at the moment Paul Polman's book, Net Positive, and he waxes lyrical about Mars.
Amazing. It's so good to hear. And thank you for having me, Anthony. And absolutely, I think we're doing a lot of great work that I'm personally really proud of. And I think across Mars, we're really proud of. So pleased to hear of the positive reception on it.
And I think, I feel it's really important to tell these positive stories. You only need to watch the news to see a lot of negative stories. Negative stories sell newspapers or inches on online magazines or whatever. We can very easily talk ourselves into a depression, and yet there is some really good things going on. And I do think, as a veterinary profession, it's really important for us to tell those good news stories. I know companies are always worried about greenwashing, but if we are doing good in a certain area, I think it's really important to talk about it, because there was a survey with BVA a few years ago, and 89% of vets wanted to be more active in sustainability. But looking at it, sometimes I'm not sure where we're up to. I'd be really interested in your thoughts on, are we still at the early adopter stage of taking sustainability seriously as a veterinary sector, or do you think that it's becoming more mainstream?
Yeah, it's a great question. And just to say before getting to that, I absolutely agree on the importance of sharing these stories because it can be very doom and gloom. Absolutely. When we look at the impacts of climate change playing out right now with natural disasters increasing in severity and frequency, you look at other issues of waste, antimicrobial resistance, drugs no longer working in the ways that we need, it can be completely overwhelming. So I very much agree that showing where there are such great progress points and proof points that we are making a difference, the broader we across the sustainability profession, I think is so important for maintaining that inspiration and learning from each other and seeing the examples that really do work, so that we can all copy and paste what others are doing. So just wanted to note that and very much agree. And in terms of where we are on the journey, I do think we're still at the earlier part of the journey when it comes to practicing sustainability in veterinary care. Not to say that there hasn't been great work for many years, but in terms of the potential and really just getting started in some of the topic areas, I think that's where we are, which is exciting. It means there's so much runway ahead of us, both for large corporations like Mars Veterinary Health, but also small independent practices. There's so much that can be done on an everyday, easy, tactical changes that we can make that can make a
Mm.
big difference. So lots ahead, and we're hopeful. Part of the goal of our work and to be sharing it is to help guide the way for others, and to be showcasing, what we're learning, what we're doing to help speed up that process. Since everyone is early on the journey, how can we help fast track with everything that we're learning within Mars Veterinary Health?
That's fantastic to hear, because I talk a lot about, if we're going to compete on sustainability, we have to be the worst of fools. This has to be an area that we do collaborate on. I understand every business has competitors and so on, but I think in this area it is so important. And thank you for the leadership you're taking on that in things like gaseous anesthesia. That really has been revolutionary, and of course can have such a significant effect on greenhouse gas emissions, can't it?
Absolutely. And that's one of our examples we're really proud of in our climate change work, doing our part to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And yes, as you know, anesthetic gas is a greenhouse gas inherently. And so anything we can do to prevent that from entering the atmosphere will help reduce our carbon footprint and also pave the way, for that technology to be existing and for others to use it as well. It's in its really early stages, and we're piloting that. But one of the great ways that we can be tackling climate change, and one of the unique areas where veterinary has an impact, unlike many other professions.
Yeah, I mean, and it's developing as well with the great work you're doing, with Ellie West as well, not only on the low flow anesthetics, but also looking at total infusion venous anesthetics. But then, of course, you've got the canisters now that will actually take in the isoflurane. And of course, the next stage is hopefully being able to recycle that in that beautiful example of circularity once we get to that stage. Tell us a little bit about what you're getting up to there for perhaps people who don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So you're absolutely right. Across anesthetic gas, there are a few different levers we can be pulling to make sure that we're reducing the negative environmental impacts of using anesthetic gas. So, using lower flow practices, as you mentioned, Ellie West is one of our big leaders and experts in this space. And there are public resources available on Linnaeus's website, which is one of our businesses, on how to do safe lower flow practices. So basically, just using less gas than is necessary is a great way to reduce impact. The other main way is, of course, to make sure you're using those lower impact gases. So sevoflurane is the gas that has the least potential for global warming compared to isoflurane and nitrous oxide. Desflurane is not so much used, but really focusing on Sevo as the choice.
Yeah,
And finally, yes, as you say, anesthetic gas recapture is a new area, a new innovation that we're piloting in Linnaeus, also looking at piloting it in the US with potential to scale up. And the really neat, as you say, part of this technology, it has the potential to not only capture the gas and prevent it from entering the atmosphere where it is causing climate change, but also has the potential to purify that gas and make it reusable in a pretty high percentage of capture and reuse rate. So it's not currently possible due to licensing, but that's the direction it's headed. And what, as you say, what an amazing circularity story to be able to completely reuse a gas over and over and over, reduces waste, reduces climate impacts, really across the board, so many benefits, and driving efficiency and potentially cost savings as well down the line. So it's a new technology we're really excited about and hopeful that we can bring to scale.
I think this is one of the other really important points, isn't it? That we do it because it's the right thing to do, but actually, the reality is that more people will do it if it's actually going to save money. And I know you're doing a lot of work also, and I don't want to just talk about carbon, but also with the renewable energy for a lot of your practices in the UK, also in America. The thing with using renewable energy is, of course, there's also a responsibility to produce as well. Are you starting to look potentially at solar panels on practices as well? I know that the law and the way that solar is treated, differs state to state in America.
Yeah.
Obviously, in the UK, you can put excessive energy back into the grid. I have solar panels on my own roof. I'm just about getting for one of the companies putting it on my old practice roof, which I'm very
Right.
excited about. It's taken a bit of time,
Yeah.
but easy doesn't necessarily always work. Some of these things can be difficult, but they're still the right thing to do. Are you starting to do some of that in Mars as well, actually putting solar on roofs?
Yes, it's a great question. And first to say, renewable electricity and renewable energy overall is such a critical action to be taking for really every industry,
Yeah,
including the veterinary profession. So it's definitely been a big priority for us, as well as part of Mars. And we all within Mars and Mars Veterinary Health have specific targets around achieving renewable electricity for our clinics,
yeah,
for our factories, and so on. So a major focus for us, how we've approached it, we're lucky to be part of Mars and have their scale behind us. And a big part of their strategy on renewables is to really help to fund those large scale solar and wind developments. And
yeah,
so, as part of that, that's really been our renewable sourcing strategy rather than rooftop installation on our clinics. It's much more efficient to be helping to support those large investments. And so that is, for example, how we've done it in the US. So we have 2,000 clinics in the US. And a few years ago, Mars, as part of a larger initiative that we joined on with them, helped to fund the development of a large scale wind farm in Ford Ridge, Illinois. And
Right.
that wind farm is not only supplying all of our 2,000 clinics with renewable energy certificates, but also Mars pet care factories and pet food factories, as well as a whole set of our suppliers across pet care and Mars Inc. And so, some really big benefits to doing agreements like that at that scale that really support those energy certificates across so many sites. We do look at, for some of our locations, where feasible, to put rooftop solar. Just on the whole, it is more efficient and we drive more change industry wide if we're supporting those larger projects. So that's been our approach. And we've achieved that in the US as well as in the UK for our Linnaeus clinics are now fully renewable electricity sourced in the UK. We're next working on our European countries,
Yes.
which we'll be achieving soon. We're really excited that we're on track to hit that target as well and have renewable electricity across all of our Anakira sites in Europe as well.
And of course, what that does, I think, is it gives you one, I'm sure, a saving at cost. So not only is it good for the planet, but I think, as we said, it is saving money, but presumably it can also give you some sort of resilience. We obviously had the political instability on gas and electricity in the UK due to the invasion of Ukraine. With your own supply, you know the price that you're going to be paying for your electricity, etc., etc.
Absolutely. Yes. And I think, that one of the benefits of rooftop and, on-site generation is just that more direct control. So certainly something, that I think makes sense. One of our challenges, is just looking at the distribution of our sites and having 3,000 around the world and just what makes sense. And again, using our scale in ways that drive efficiency and, really also bring more clean electricity into the grid is certainly one of our goals as well.
No, that's fantastic, and I didn't realize about the big wind factory in Illinois. So that's really interesting. I want to talk a little bit about Buddy, the cat who adopted us during the pandemic, because he was being fed on a certain food. And then I heard a podcast from, and I know it's not Mars Veterinary Health, but about Sheba and the Reef of Hope in Indonesia, which was a story that really touched me. And actually, as a consumer, I said, right, I need to probably buy some Sheba because it's, doing such a good thing in the world. And now Buddy prefers this, and occasionally we have to get another brand, and he will turn his nose up to it. So you've sort of made life a bit difficult for me, but it is still a really really nice story. Do you know anything about the reef over in Indonesia?
I do, and it's such a great example, I think, of the Mars Pet Care commitment to sustainability at all levels. And Sheba and the sourcing behind Sheba, we have really strong commitments to sustainable sourcing for all of the ingredients that go into our pet food, including what's going into Sheba and how we're sourcing fish and doing that sustainably. So I think not necessarily right in the story around the reef, but just know that behind all the sourcing of our pet food, there is so much good work going into protecting both the environment of where those ingredients are coming from, grown and raised or caught, but also on the social side and protecting human rights across those supply chains. So that's something I think just to know across our pet food. But the Sheba Hope Reef, I think then is such a great, spotlighted, visible example of what they're doing. And really what they're doing is creating an artificial reef to help regenerate a coral reef that had been, I think, in that area or nearby, but had been destroyed through different ways, climate change being one of the contributing factors to a lot of coral destruction, other things as well. And so they've created basically this artificial reef that actually spells out hope. And so you can see from aerial photos, the word hope, and really signifying that we can regenerate, we can restore some of the damage that we as a society have done to environments, including coral reef. And it's had great success in terms of they're taking a very scientific approach to the reef and measuring and monitoring it. And they've had such great results in seeing species come back and coral actually regrowing on the artificial reef. And then, the entire ecosystem starting to make a home there. So, such
Hmm.
a, I think, a great example of all the hard work going on, behind the scenes to source, for example, the fish that goes into Sheba food and the commitment beyond that to do good. I think
Hmm.
that's just such a great example of where Mars's commitment is.
I think it was Charles Peggoy said, hope is difficult, despair is much easier.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this whole sort of idea really this year. The church, the Catholic Church, is in a year where the theme is Pilgrims of Hope, and I do think whether you're have faith or have no faith, hope is such an important thing that you have to do the sort of job that you're doing, Margot, presumably.
Absolutely, and it is you have to have hope to keep going. And certainly what gets me up and back at work every single day. And I think part of that hope is also staying focused on small easy actions that we can take. That also makes me hopeful when I can kind of break it down into small pieces of what we each can do every day. And that's very much a part of our sustainability approach and work across Mars Veterinary Health, and also part of the reason why we published our first sustainability report earlier this year was to hopefully inspire that hope, and to show that look, this can feel overwhelming and hard, but actually there are some small, easy actions you can take every day, to make sustainability come to life and make a clinic more sustainable. So, I think that's just part of the full package of hope is being able to stay focused on, okay, what can I do today to make a difference and know that you can just keep doing that every day.
Yeah, and obviously I've looked at the sustainability report and really impressed with that, and obviously using some of that in what we're talking about now. We've obviously got also the area around waste reduction as well. What I like is, again, with Mars, is that there's not a sort of obsession with carbon, because I think there's a danger that particularly almost at government level, we seem to hear all the time about COP26 or COP28 or whatever, and it's very much carbon, carbon, carbon.
Mhm.
The Hope Reef obviously has a carbon element to it, but it's also this increasing of biodiversity, and then also helping to reduce waste, is another really important component as well. So I know you're doing some really interesting initiatives there as well. So perhaps share those with us.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can give you a couple examples, and waste is such a critical issue. It's one that our veterinarians and veterinary nurses and technicians and our other veterinary professionals see and feel every day. After a procedure, you're often left with a pile of waste. Even after a simple exam, there is waste created. And so it's just one that is very visible. And it's one that we therefore really prioritize because we not only want to make a real impact and reduce our waste, but also help people feel really proud of the work that they're doing and not have that bad feeling about, oh, I wish I could
Yeah.
recycle more. Oh, I wish this didn't create so much waste when I do this type of exam. So a few of the things that we're doing, one is just around basics of getting the right recycling streams and waste streams in our clinics and have good signage and training. Really just those basics of making sure the services are available and clear for how to dispose of waste in the right way. The other piece we're really focused on is waste reduction and avoidance. We like to start at the top of the waste hierarchy and really thinking about, do we need to use this supply for this exam? Gloves is a great example of that, and really refreshing our guidance around when do you need to wear gloves versus when it's
Yeah.
not needed and we're using a supply that's unnecessary and therefore creating unnecessary waste. So that avoidance and reduction at the start is where we
Yes.
like to focus. When we need to, of course, use supplies, we then want to think about reusables. So that's a big focus for us, is thinking about what supplies can we either revert to reusable options that we used to use, or that there are new options on the market that can be used. One that we're looking into is reusable sterilization tins or containers that
Hmm.
help get rid of the single-use pouches when put in the autoclave. So that's one that we're just starting to dig in more to this year. But then when it comes to recycling, this is of course again a little lower on the waste hierarchy, but one that is a great help in reducing waste. And so, an exciting initiative that we're doing is looking at those hard to recycle flexible plastics. And so, we've launched across a subset of our clinics pet food packaging recycling. So, a lot of pet food packs are flexible plastic, can't be curbside recycled easily in a lot of countries and municipalities. So, having a box where those can be dropped off from either pet owners or our own associates, and those can then be recycled. And we've collected just over 18,000 pounds already from that program. And then another one that we're really excited about is more in that avoidance area, which is the prioritized area, is a reusable tote program. So you can imagine how many deliveries our hospitals get to get their medical
Hmm.
supplies. So consolidating those deliveries is important, and that's part of this work. but
Yeah.
then also looking at what are those deliveries coming in. And we've been partnering with our supplier MWI in the US to replace single use cardboard and styrofoam with these reusable plastic totes that can be reused hundreds and hundreds of times. And that has just helped reduce waste. It's also reduced time that our associates have to spend unpacking and then flattening cardboard and dealing with the waste. They actually can just open the lids and close the lids.
Mm.
And it actually has been a
Yeah.
huge time saver and therefore cost saver as well. So that reusable tote program has just been a really big success. It's at over 1,000 clinics in the US already and looking to scale up. So it's a great waste avoidance example that we have as well.
My wife is a junior school teacher, and she does occasionally come home and tear her hair out because even if you have all of the nice recycled boxes, do you still have that problem where people put it in the wrong box in America as well?
We do, we do. It is an ongoing challenge, and that signage is
Education.
exactly training, signage, making sure people know how to put the right item in the right bin, and cleaning things out as well. It is an ongoing challenge, so we're really trying to get into that with the right repeated training and communications around it.
Because it's also interesting, I think, and I certainly see this. I'm very passionate about it in my company, and yet I'm a very small company compared with Mars, but we still would have problems having buy-in from the team, and it has to be coming both ways, doesn't it? Sort of, if you want to say top down and bottom up. Obviously, it's very obvious that the Mars family are very committed to all these areas across the different businesses that they run. How do you sort out that recalcitrant employee who really just is not bothered and doesn't want to do it?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it is a challenge. I think part of all of this is helping to communicate the why.
Hmm.
Why are we trying to reduce waste? Why are we trying to reduce our carbon emissions? And helping to educate and share the damage that's being done. You're really trying to get at the hearts and minds approach as to, why are we asking people to take an extra 2 seconds and think about where to put the item in the right bin? So that education and knowledge sharing. And it also, how can we align with their priorities is another, approach
Yeah.
we want to take. They're if that person is maybe just so busy because they have these other targets they need to hit, how could we align our targets with theirs, that actually we're helping to achieve their goals with what we're actually trying to do in our work. The other piece is incentives, right? How do we build the right incentives behind
Yes.
sustainability work that we're trying to do as much as possible? So a suite of approaches that we would try to use, and I think also, we won't reach everyone, and that's okay. We do want everyone to be engaged, and everyone has a role to play, but we also won't let that totally stall or slow down the progress that we're making.
And of course, it is ESG. Obviously, we talk a lot about E on the podcast,
Mhm.
but S and G are also really important as well. And I suppose if people see, and I know certain companies that do a lot for the environment, but aren't necessarily good employers.
Mhm.
So it is important to have that breadth, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think Mars is a great example of very much, focusing both on environment and social, and having the governance behind that to deliver the impact. And when we think about the S of ESG, it's huge for veterinary medicine. Our business is
Yes.
our people,
Yeah.
and their skills and their health and well-being. And so certainly an area of focus across Mars Veterinary Health as well. In our work and our report, we're focused on the E, on the environmental
Mm.
topics, but absolutely, without our people, we can't take care of pets. So it's absolutely critical.
And again, it's all holistic, isn't it? Because we know that if you put people in a very sterile environment, they get depressed. Whereas if you
Mhm.
can put them into a beautiful environment, a green environment, even a nice office or whatever, that raises their own spirits and probably productivity as well.
Exactly. And that's why we've seen such success with even small initiatives of, having our associates bring in their own reusable coffee mug, and water bottles to use, and just be surrounded by examples of, doing our part, doing our best to protect the planet. Things like that we see associates just get really excited about and feel proud of. And when you have that in your workplace, and then you look and see, oh, we do have a recycling bin and we're using it well, all adds to, I think, that
Mm.
environment and supportive of mental health and feeling good about your workplace.
It's really interesting. We're going to be running an event in the south of France that I know you know about in June called the Veterinary Green Discussion Forum. Really excited because we've run it for the first 3 years in the UK, and Royal Canin have kindly sort of said they wants to get more involved. So we're running it quite close to the campus down there, and obviously we've been talking to Royal Canin a lot, and they say obviously from a how can they have the biggest environmental impact, and it is on the sustainability of their ingredients. So, making sure that fish comes from a sustainable source. I know they're doing a lot of regenerative agriculture to also bring resources together. I love their analogenic diet. It's my favorite diet. I did a lot of dermatology when I was practicing, and any diet made of chicken feather. I mean, this is just a great circularity example again, isn't it? And then looking at packaging, and I think you mentioned it before about these plastic packagings now that obviously Shiva and the other diets come in. It is a small part of the sustainability, but again, I think it's an issue that raises emotions, doesn't it? Because when you take one of those, you have to throw it in the bin. We have to do things. We can't just look at carbon. We can't just look at biodiversity. We have to look at the whole suite of things. And I think in the big picture, that's right. But as you said before, doing one thing at a time, for a practice to say, well, this is such a big problem, we can't do everything. Having those small objectives, maybe changing to LED lighting, maybe looking at the anesthetic gases and how they can use them more efficiently by looking at the Linnaeus website. I think Greenpeace talk about thinking globally but acting locally. It's a really good example of that, isn't it?
It is, and those are such great examples of actions that you can pretty easily take, and I would add a few others of, make sure you've got a recycling service and that you've got good signage and that your
Yeah.
colleagues know how to recycle and what to put in each bin. Look at your kitchen and break room and think about, are we using any single use disposable things like forks and knives or plates or cups that could be replaced with reusables, buying bulk things for the kitchen as well, and then
Mm.
shift into more medical supplies, looking around for what could be replaced with a reusable option. There's so many ways that we can be doing that safely. And also thinking about outside of the clinic, how do you arrive at work every day? Are there any options for carpooling or public transportation or electric bikes? How else could we creatively get to and from work than a lower carbon way? So
Yeah.
some of those hopefully easier things to do as you look around a clinic of ways to get started. And we also find just following the passion, following the excitement.
Mm.
So if there's an associate at the clinic who is really excited about recycling, well, follow that. Take
Yeah.
that momentum and passion, and then move on to other maybe harder topics about how to source renewable electricity through your utility company. But start where there's passion and momentum, because that's where we see it is the right place to start and build that momentum from there.
That's right. It's the low hanging fruit, isn't it? And
Yeah.
and that whole idea of the journey of 1,000 steps starts with the first step. We have to start somewhere, and I think this is a big blockage for my perception. Is it's a big blockage for practices because it seems so big they don't quite know where to start. So thank you for those great examples as well.
Absolutely. Yes. And keeping in mind that it can be easy if you break it down to just some of those small actions.
And I love that whole idea of circularity, which then brings all of those different elements of carbon, of biodiversity, of making things last longer, of recycling, stopping pollution, and so on. Really excited, obviously, that Mars Veterinary Health are coming to the Veterinary Green Discussion Forum. As I say, you are a great inspiration for me personally, both as a business, but also you, Margo, personally, and Ellie, who, of course, has been one of our Green Vets of the Year when we started our Green Awards at the Webinar Vet. She is really doing so much pioneering work, and it's very exciting to have her there to teach. But also, it's impossible to be great at everything. So by coming together as a group of companies and businesses and vets, we can learn from each other, can't we?
Absolutely. No, we're really excited about it. And hats off for all the work that you do, Anthony, to organize that event every year and other sustainability moments and engagements like this one, to getting that message out. And as you say, to come together and collaborate. These challenges are so big. They're beyond any individual or any company, even
Mm.
as large as Mars. And so we all need to be coming together and working on these. So the event that you hold, I think, is just such a great opportunity to do that and put our heads together. How do we solve these challenges faster and more efficiently? So yeah, really excited for that collaboration and the work that you're doing to
Mm.
bring it together.
It was great. Last year we had a vet who came who was coming for the first time from a company, and he said, "Gosh, this is raising my spirits because I see it's not just me thinking about it. That there is a movement going on. As you said earlier, it's in its early stages, but actually, small numbers of businesses, people trying their best can make a big difference, can't it? I know governments are important as well, but governments often take a long time to act. I really believe that the individual and the business, large and small, will be the ones that will really solve a lot of these problems."
I think I agree, and I think it's critical. We really see it as a responsibility to be leading this work on sustainability, making our clinics as sustainable as possible. It's part of our responsibility and the opportunity we have with the scale we have, with the Mars commitment to sustainability. So absolutely, and I think we can do it. We've got the commitment and also associates who are passionate about these
Mm.
topics and these impacts, and so absolutely, I think we have a really big role to play in the private sector.
Margo, thank you for all that you do. Obviously, you're not a vet. I think that's one of the great things that corporatization has brought, that it brings really clever people from outside the profession. We can be a bit conservative and a bit navel gazing. So to bring people of skills from all different areas has been a benefit, I think, of the corporatization. And yeah, thank you for all the inspiration as well and all that you do. And carry on, please, all the good work.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Anthony, for having me on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for listening. Hope to see you on a podcast or a webinar very soon. Take care and have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.